Welcome to Momentum Mind, where your thoughts become your power and your mindset drives your momentum. Every week, we dive into transformative ideas, self-help strategies, and mindset shifts that can change the way you think, act, and achieve. Today, get ready to explore a story that will challenge the way you see the world and unlock new ways to think, unlearn, and grow. Chapter 1: The Man Who Refused to Doubt. The morning fog lay thick over the Valley of Glass, where every house shimmered with walls so clear that you could see the lives inside them, people eating, arguing, kissing, dreaming. But one house stood apart, built of stone, opaque, unchanging. That house belonged to Elias, a man who believed he already knew everything worth knowing. Elias was a mapmaker, and his maps were perfect, or so he said. He had spent his life charting every inch of the known world, every river, every mountain, every border. He kept his maps rolled neatly in a cabinet locked with silver clasps. No one else dared to touch them. One evening, as the wind scratched against his shutters, a knock echoed at his door. He opened it to find a girl in a long grey cloak, carrying a map that looked wrong. The rivers bent the wrong way. The mountains were in different places. Even the stars in the corner were drawn backward. "You've drawn chaos," Elias said, frowning. "No," she whispered. "I've drawn what's real." Her eyes were sharp and strange, as though she saw through him. Before Elias could answer, she dropped the map on his doorstep and vanished into the fog. He snorted, rolled his eyes, and tossed the paper aside. But that night, as he stared at his own maps, something unsettling stirred in him. The rivers on her map, they twisted differently, yes, but they matched the direction the wind had blown lately. The stars, reversed, but hadn't the constellations shifted ever so slightly last winter? No, he told himself. Impossible. The world does not change. Still, when he woke the next morning, he found his ink bottles overturned, his quills scattered, and the girl's map spread open across his table, as if the wind itself had demanded he look again. Elias took a deep breath and stepped outside. The world looked the same, yet not. The mountains to the north seemed a shade closer. The air smelled sharper, colder. And far in the distance, a ridge he had marked long ago as flat was now jagged as a blade. He blinked. Shook his head. Surely his eyes were tired, but the doubt had been planted. And once doubt takes root, it grows fast. That night, he pulled down his oldest maps, some made when he was just an apprentice. Comparing them to his newest ones, he saw it clearly: rivers had moved. Valleys had deepened. The world had changed, but he had not. His maps, once flawless, were fossils. He stayed awake until dawn, surrounded by paper and ink, trying to redraw what he saw, but every time he thought he had captured the truth shifted again. His hand began to tremble. The walls of his stone house suddenly felt suffocating. He threw open the window, desperate for air, and in the faint light of morning, he saw something impossible. Beyond the valley, a mountain was moving, slowly, silently, as though dragged by invisible hands. It shifted westward. The earth itself seemed to breathe beneath it. Elias's jaw fell open. His world, the fixed, certain world he had devoted his life to charting, was alive. He stumbled outside, barefoot, the cold grass biting his feet. The mountain kept moving, and as it did, a voice rose in the distance, faint at first, then stronger. It came from the fog. "Do you still think your maps are perfect?" It was the girl's voice. He looked around, but she was nowhere to be seen. Only her grey cloak lay draped over a rock, fluttering in the wind like a discarded shadow. Elias bent to pick it up, and inside the fabric, he found a small silver compass, spinning wildly, never settling on north. He clutched it, trembling. For the first time in his life, he didn't know which way was home, and that frightened him more than anything. He turned toward the mountain again, its dark outline rippling under the dawn light. Something inside him, the same stubborn certainty that had once kept him safe, now burned like a chain. He could not stay in the Valley of Glass. Not after what he'd seen. Elias packed his tools, his blankest parchment, and the girl's compass, though it spun without rest. He locked his stone house behind him and walked into the fog. Each step forward made the world shimmer, as though unseen layers of it were peeling open. Trees leaned closer, their bark whispering secrets. Streams curved differently when he blinked. Even the sky seemed to breathe, and as the valley disappeared behind him, he felt it, a strange, electric pull, like the hum before a storm. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't know what he would find, but somewhere beyond that moving mountain, he knew the girl was waiting, and that she would show him a truth he wasn't sure he wanted to see. The compass in his palm pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Then it pointed, for the first time, straight ahead. Elias followed it into the unknown. Chapter 2: The Mirror Library. The fog thickened as Elias walked, swallowing sound and distance alike. The world turned soft and strange, every shape bending in the mist. The compass trembled in his hand, its needle twitching like a living thing. He walked until his legs ached and the valley behind him was only a memory. By dusk, the fog began to thin, revealing faint lights ahead, dozens of them, floating in the air like slow-moving fireflies. As he came closer, he saw that they weren't insects at all but lanterns, each tied to a long, silver chain that vanished into the clouds above. Beneath them stood a building that looked as though it had been grown, not built, vast arches of glass and wood, shifting gently like tree branches in the wind. A sign carved into the gate read, "The Mirror Library." Elias hesitated. He had heard whispers of this place, but only in rumors told by travelers, a library where books read you back, where knowledge did not stay still. He pushed open the gate. Inside, the air shimmered like heat on sand. Endless halls stretched in every direction, filled with mirrors instead of shelves. Each mirror reflected not his face, but 1,000 versions of it, younger, older, angry, proud, uncertain. They watched him as he walked, blinking when he did, breathing when he breathed. Then one spoke. Elias the mapmaker, said, a reflection of him with softer eyes. "You've come to redraw the world. But are you ready to redraw yourself?" He stumbled backward. "Who are you?" "Who are you?" Or the reflection replied. "The man who knew everything? Or the man who finally asked a question?" Before he could answer, a faint laugh echoed from deeper inside the hall. He followed the sound, weaving through reflections that shifted and rippled with every step. The laugh grew clearer until he reached a vast circular chamber. In its center floated a single book, enormous, bound in metal, glowing faintly blue. The girl was there, sitting cross-legged beneath it, her gray cloak pulled around her. She was reading without touching the pages, which turned on their own. "You followed the compass," she said, "without looking up. You left it for me. I left it for whoever still had the courage to be lost." Elias frowned. "I don't understand this place." "No one does," she said. "That's why it works." He approached the floating book. On its open page was a map, but this one was unlike any he'd seen. It was made of light and shadow, showing not rivers and mountains but choices. Every decision branched into 100 glowing paths, all leading to different versions of himself. He touched one line, and the image shifted, showing a younger Elias, laughing beside an old teacher he had once defied. Another path showed him alone in his stone house, older, bitter, surrounded by dust. Another showed him with the girl, standing on a cliff, staring at a storm that had no end. He pulled his hand back. "What is this?" "The library remembers every mind that comes here," she said. "It shows what you were, what you could be, and what you're afraid to see." "I came to redraw the world," he muttered. "Then start by redrawing your map of truth," she replied softly. "It's been shrinking for too long." She stood and pointed to the mirrors around them. "Go on. Ask them what they know." Elias turned toward the reflections. Each one seemed to shimmer with a different mood: anger, pride, wonder, fear. Tentatively, he stepped closer to one that looked calm and curious. "Tell me what's true," he said. The reflection smiled. "Truth changes when you look at it. Like light in water." He frowned and moved to another, this one scowling, stern. "Tell me what's real." The second reflection sneered. "Real is whatever makes you feel safe." He moved again, heart racing. Every mirror gave him a different answer. "So there's no truth at all," he cried. The girl's voice echoed behind him. "There's truth, but it's alive. And you've been treating it like a corpse." Her words struck him hard. He thought of his old maps, of the way he'd refused to change them, refused to admit the rivers had shifted. He had trapped the world in his own certainty. The mirrors around him began to ripple. Some showed moments he had forgotten, his first failure, the friend he'd stopped listening to, the time he'd mocked a younger apprentice for daring to question his map. He sank to his knees. The mirrors hummed softly, like 100 voices whispering the same thing: "See again. Think again." When he looked up, the girl was gone. The floating book had closed itself, and the room darkened until only the lanterns outside shone faintly through the windows. Elias rose shakily, clutching the spinning compass. Its needle now pointed toward a narrow staircase that spiraled downward beneath the chamber. He hesitated. The air down there smelled like ink and dust and something older, the scent of forgotten things. He took one step, then another, his heartbeat echoing off the walls. As he descended, the mirrors began to murmur again, soft as wind. "The next truth you seek lives in the place where you were wrong." The stairs ended at a heavy iron door. A faint light leaked from the crack beneath it, pulsing like a heartbeat. Elias reached for the handle. From behind the door came a whisper, his own voice. "I was right," it said. "I was always right." He froze. The word sent a chill through him, colder than the fog outside. He could turn back. He could leave the library, forget the mirrors, and return to the certainty of stone walls and still maps, but the compass in his hand pulsed again, urging him forward. Elias tightened his grip, pushed the door open, and stepped into the dark. Chapter 3: The Chamber of Broken Maps. The door groaned open, and a heavy breath of cold air swept past Elias as he stepped into the dark. At first, he could see nothing. The light from the stairwell died behind him, swallowed by shadows thick as oil. He held up the compass. It glowed faintly now, its spinning needle shedding a silvery pulse that illuminated the space around him. Shapes emerged, tables covered in dust, scrolls unfurled across the floor, broken glass scattered like frost, and maps. Thousands of them, they hung from the walls, draped from the ceiling, curled around pillars like dead vines. Some were torn, others burned at the edges. Their ink bled into strange colors, rivers twisting like veins. Every one of them was wrong. Elias's chest tightened. These were his maps, his handwriting, his markings, his proud signature in the corner of each. He stepped closer to one. It showed the valley of glass, but the mountains were drawn too high, the rivers in the wrong places. He remembered the day he made it. He had dismissed an apprentice who suggested the valley stretched farther east. He had mocked him for doubting. Now he saw the apprentice had been right. The map quivered on the wall, and as Elias reached to touch it, the ink rippled like water. His reflection appeared on its surface, older, bitter, eyes full of pride. "Why did you abandon me?" the reflection hissed. Elias stumbled back. "You're not real." "I was your truth," it said. "You killed me when you started to question." He shook his head, heart pounding. The reflection's face twisted into a snarl. "You built your world on certainty, Elias. You drew walls around your mind and called them mountains." The map tore itself apart, paper splitting like dry skin. Behind it, a faint blue light glowed. Elias peered through the tear and saw another room beyond the wall, smaller, circular, lit by dozens of candles that burned without melting. In the center stood a table carved from stone. Upon it lay a single map unlike the others. This one was alive. Its lines shifted slowly, rivers bending and mountains moving, as though the world it described were breathing. Every time he blinked, something changed. He approached it, trembling. "What is this?" he whispered. The voice that answered was not human. It came from the walls, the air, maybe even from inside him. "This is the first map," it said. "The world as it truly is, always in motion, never the same." Elias stared at it, mesmerized. "But how can anyone chart it if it never stays still?" "That," said the voice, "is the wrong question. The world does not wait for you to chart it. You must learn to move with it." He reached out a trembling hand to trace a river that twisted before his eyes. The moment his finger touched it, the world around him rippled. The candles flickered, their flames turning blue. Suddenly, he wasn't in the chamber anymore. He stood on the edge of a cliff overlooking an ocean that glowed from within, each wave shimmering with constellations. The stars above him spun faster and faster, rearranging themselves into new patterns every second. The sky itself was alive, and every breath he took changed it. He turned in awe, and there she was again, the girl in grey, standing at the edge of the cliff. "You're inside your own mind now," she said quietly. "This is the map you never dared to draw." He looked around, dizzy. "It's chaos." "It's truth," she replied. "Truth moves. You tried to trap it, remember?" Elias sank to his knees. "I thought certainty made me wise." She smiled faintly. "Certainty only makes you comfortable. Wisdom lives where comfort dies." The sky darkened suddenly. The glowing ocean dimmed, and the stars froze mid-spin. A wind rose from nowhere, fierce and cold. "What's happening?" he cried. The girl's expression hardened. "The chamber doesn't like to be questioned. It feeds on what you believe. You've starved it." Cracks split the cliff beneath him. The ground shuddered, and the world began to collapse, folding in on itself like torn parchment. Elias stumbled toward her. "How do I stop it?" "You don't," she said, her voice rising over the roar of the wind. "You let it fall apart. Let everything you thought was true collapse. Only then will you see what remains." The cliff split open, and Elias plunged into the darkness below. He fell through endless ink, black, thick, and silent. Maps and fragments of old truth spun around him, fluttering like dying birds. His own voice echoed through the void, repeating every time he had once said, "I'm sure." He landed hard on cold stone. When he opened his eyes, he was back in the chamber, though the candles were gone. The moving map still pulsed on the table, dimmer now, as if waiting. Elias staggered to his feet, drenched in sweat. The compass in his pocket was still spinning wildly. He placed it on the map, and for the first time, the needle stopped. It pointed not north, not east, but down. From beneath the table came a faint scratching sound. He knelt and found a small door hidden in the floor, its keyhole glowing softly. He didn't have a key. But as he touched the metal, the voice from the wall spoke again. You can't unlock it with certainty. Only with doubt. Elias hesitated, then whispered, maybe I don't know what's next. The lock clicked open. He lifted the hatch and saw a spiral staircase leading deeper underground, lit by a strange golden light that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The air smelled of dust, ink, and something sweet, like the memory of a forgotten dream. He took a deep breath, looked once more at the living map, and began his descent. Behind him, the chamber sighed, a long, weary exhale, as if letting go of something it had held for too long. Far below, the golden light flickered, waiting, and in the faint echo of his footsteps, Elias could swear he heard the girl's voice once more. And now we begin to unlearn. Chapter 4, The Temple of Unlearning. The staircase spiraled downward, narrow and steep, each step echoing like a drop of water in a deep cave. Elias held the compass close, though its glow was faint now, a tired flicker, like a candle running out of wax. The air thickened the deeper he went, warm and heavy, humming with something alive beneath the stone. After what felt like forever, the stairs ended at a vast underground chamber. Elias stepped into it, and his breath caught. It was not built like any temple he had ever seen. The walls were carved from black marble that shimmered faintly in the dim golden light. Rivers of molten ink flowed along grooves in the floor, winding toward a pool at the center. Around it stood towering statues, not of gods, but of people. Men and women, young and old, all frozen in the act of covering their eyes. Above them, an inscription glowed faintly on the wall. To learn, first you must forget. Elias moved closer to the pool. Its surface reflected not his face but scenes, moments from his life. There he was, standing proudly in front of his first map, holding it up for applause. There he was again, sneering at a rival who'd challenged his work. And there, alone, older, staring at the walls of his stone house, each image shimmered like a living memory. He knelt beside the pool. The voice that had followed him since the library spoke again, soft as a whisper through water. This is where all who seek truth must come, it said. To empty themselves of what they think they know. Elias gazed into the shifting pool. And if I don't? Then you'll keep seeing the world through the cage of your own mind. The pool rippled. One of the statue's eyes flickered open, faintly glowing. Elias stepped back in alarm. The statue's lips moved. Do you still believe you are right? It asked. He couldn't answer. The others began to stir, the statues of the old, the young, the wise, and the foolish, their voices blending into a chorus. What did you build your truth on? What will you become when it's gone? Can a mapmaker still draw when the world refuses to hold still? The voices rose until they became a single echoing hum. The golden light dimmed, leaving only the glow of the molten ink. Elias felt his knees weaken. He knelt again before the pool. I don't know, he whispered. The whisper echoed, multiplied, filled the temple. He does not know, the statues murmured. He admits he does not know. The molten ink began to rise from the grooves, snaking toward him like living threads. It wrapped around his hands, cool despite its glow, and pulled gently. He resisted at first, instinctively, stubbornly. But then he remembered the girl's words, let everything you thought was true collapse. So he stopped resisting. The ink climbed up his arms, coiling like vines, and spread across his skin. He gasped, not in pain, but in a strange kind of relief. The ink seeped into him, and for a moment, he felt everything he had ever believed begin to unravel, like threads pulled loose from an old tapestry. His maps, his rules, his pride, all of it melted away into the ink. He saw flashes, his teacher's face, the girl's grey cloak, the living map. Each image dissolved, replaced by something quieter, emptier. When the ink finally sank beneath his skin, Elias opened his eyes. The temple was silent. The statues had returned to stillness, but he felt light as if someone had lifted a weight from behind his eyes. He looked into the pool again. This time, he saw not his reflection, but a vast opened sky, cloudless, shifting with faint light. It wasn't the world outside. It was something else. Something inside. From the far side of the chamber came the sound of footsteps. Soft, deliberate, the girl appeared again, her grey cloak glinting faintly in the golden light. She smiled when she saw him. So, she said. You've begun. Elias stood shakily. I don't understand what's happening to me. You're forgetting, she said simply. That's the only way forward. Forget what? Yourself. He frowned. If I forget myself, who am I? Her smile deepened, sad, almost tender. That's the right question. She knelt beside the pool and touched its surface. The sky inside rippled, and a faint image appeared, a towering gate made of light, standing in the middle of an endless desert. Beyond that gate, she said, you'll find the next truth. but you can't reach it carrying your old mind. How do I find it? You already know where it is, she said, rising to her feet. The compass will show you. Elias pulled it from his pocket. The needle no longer spun. It pointed straight up. He frowned. Up? But there's no way. Before he could finish, the pool beneath him began to glow. The ink rivers along the floor pulsed brighter, faster, until the whole chamber vibrated like a drum. The girl stepped back, her cloak flaring in the sudden wind. The temple is releasing you, she shouted. Don't fight it. A column of golden light erupted from the pool, swallowing him whole. Elias felt himself lifted, weightless, the air rushing past his face. The temple vanished beneath him, the darkness peeling away. He was rising through layers of stone and mist, through memory and silence, until at last, he burst through into open air. The night sky stretched endlessly above him, the stars whirling in impossible constellations. Below him, the valley gleamed like glass. He was standing on the edge of a vast desert of white sand, and in the distance, glowing faintly like a second sun, was the gate he had seen in the pool. He clutched the compass. The needle still pointed toward it. Behind him, the wind whispered, soft but clear, to unlearn is to make space for what's real. Elias took his first step into the desert, his footprints glowing faintly in the sand behind him, and as he walked toward the gate of light, he wondered what part of himself he would have to leave behind next. Chapter 5, The Gate of Changing Names. The desert stretched to every horizon, white and silent as bone. The sand was so fine it shimmered like powdered glass, whispering under Elias's feet with each step. The air was hot and motionless, yet above him, the stars flickered as though blown by invisible wind. The compass still pointed forward, its glow steady now, no longer restless, no longer spinning. Elias walked toward that faint, distant light that hung like a sun trapped just above the horizon. For hours, or what felt like hours, there was nothing but the sound of his footsteps and the endless hush of sand. He began to wonder if the gate had been an illusion, a mirage conjured by the temple. But every time he thought of turning back, the compass pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. By the time he finally reached the edge of the gate, his lips were cracked, and his throat burned. It was larger than he had imagined, two colossal pillars of light, meeting at the top in an arch that pulsed and shifted as though breathing. Within it hung a veil of silver mist, swirling like a living thing. Symbols drifted across it, strange letters that formed and unformed before his eyes. He could hear faint voices within the mist. Not one voice, but many hundreds, whispering fragments of names. His name, Elias, they murmured. Elias, 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 he froze. The sound made his heart race. The girl's words echoed in his memory. You can't reach it carrying your old mind. He stepped closer, and the whispers grew louder. Some were gentle, almost kind. Others hissed his name like an accusation. He reached out a trembling hand toward the light, and the gate flared. A sudden gust of wind rose from nowhere, hot and wild. Sand spiraled around him. The voices began to twist. Elias the mapmaker, they said now. Elias who never doubted. Elias who thought he knew. He staggered back. The air rippled, and a shape began to form in front of the gate, his own silhouette, made entirely of sand and light. It looked exactly like him, but older, prouder, eye sharp with certainty. The reflection crossed its arms and stared at him with cold contempt. You don't belong beyond this gate, it said. Elias swallowed. Who are you? The reflection smirked. I am your name. I am every title you ever believed made you real. Mapmaker. Scholar. Master. Right. It circled him slowly, leaving faint trails of dust in the air. The world beyond this gate has no use for names. It has no patience for those who think knowing makes them safe. Elias clenched his fists. Then I'll go without a name. The reflection laughed, low and cruel. You say that, but you don't understand what it means. A man without a name has no shape. No voice. No past. Do you think you can live with that? Elias hesitated. The thought terrified him. He had built his entire life around who he was, his craft, his certainty, his name carved into every map he'd ever made. Without it, what remained? But the compass in his pocket burned against his skin, as if urging him forward. He took a step closer to the reflection. If losing my name is the price of truth, then take it. The reflection's eyes darkened. You don't get to give it. You must let it be taken. And before Elias could speak again, the reflection lunged. It struck him like wind and fire, a rush of light that forced its way into his chest. He gasped, stumbling backward as the air around him warped. His vision blurred, the desert twisting, the stars spinning faster. He felt something pulling at him from the inside, not his body, but his sense of self. His memories flickered like lanterns in a storm, the smell of ink, the weight of parchment, his teacher's voice, the sound of his own signature being written. Then he felt them tear away. He fell to his knees, gasping, clutching his chest as though to hold himself together. The reflection was gone. Only his voice lingered, whispering faintly in the wind, "You have no name now." Elias looked down at his hands. The compass had dimmed, its light soft and golden. The air felt lighter, his thoughts quieter, almost hollow. But within that hollowness was something he had never felt before. Peace. He rose slowly and turned toward the gate. The silver mist shimmered invitingly. The voices within it no longer called his name. They simply whispered like the tide. He stepped forward. As his foot crossed the threshold, the world changed, the air cooled. The sand turned to stone beneath his feet. He found himself standing in a vast circular plaza, surrounded by towering pillars carved with words he couldn't read. Above him, the sky glowed faintly violet, filled with drifting lights like slow-moving fireflies. At the center of the plaza stood a pool of still water. Around it, figures moved silently, cloaked in silver, faces hidden. They carried scrolls and quills made of glass. One of them turned toward him and spoke, voice calm and distant, "You've crossed the gate of changing names." Elias nodded uncertainly. "Then, who am I now?" The figure tilted its head. "You are whoever listens." "Listens to what?" "To everything you once ignored." The figure gestured toward the pool. "Come. The waters will remember what you've forgotten." Elias approached. The surface reflected not his face, but the stars above, slowly drifting across the violet sky. He leaned closer, mesmerized. Then he heard it, faint but unmistakable, the girl's voice. "You're close now," it whispered. "But the world won't let you change without testing what you've learned." He turned quickly, but she wasn't there. Only the cloaked figures, still and silent. A chill ran through him. He looked back at the pool, and the reflection staring up at him was no longer his own. It was the girl, but her eyes were filled with stormlight, her voice now sharp and echoing. "The next truth," she said, "is hidden in the place where the wise go blind." Before he could ask what that meant, the surface of the pool shattered like glass. Light exploded outward, swallowing the plaza whole. The air rippled, the pillars trembled, and Elias felt the ground vanish beneath him once again. He was falling, but this time, there was no fear. Only curiosity. Chapter 6, The City That Forgot Itself. Elias landed softly on cobblestones that gleamed like wet glass. Around him, the air shimmered with faint golden light, like sunlight filtering through fog. He looked up, and the city rose in impossible spirals, towers bending at strange angles, streets folding over each other as though the city itself could never decide on a shape. The silence was complete. Not even the wind moved. Yet he felt it, a low hum vibrating under the stone, as if the city itself were breathing. He began to walk. Every corner he turned revealed streets that had no memory of him, roads that twisted backward, houses that rearranged themselves while he watched. Doors opened to rooms that shouldn't exist. Windows reflected scenes from places he had never been, yet they felt familiar. At first, he thought he was dreaming. But when he touched the walls, he felt their cold, solid weight. This city was real. A faint voice whispered from somewhere behind a wall, "You are here." Elias froze. "Who's there?" No answer. Only the hum, deeper now, like a heartbeat. He walked further, past a fountain that poured light instead of water. The surface shimmered with scenes from his life, his first map, the temple of unlearning, the desert and the gate. But the images were fractured, shifting unpredictably. A figure approached from the shadows. Cloaked, faceless, moving with grace. "Welcome to Viridia," the figure said. "The city that forgot itself." Forgot itself? Elias asked. "How can a city forget?" "Not just a city," the figure replied. "Every inhabitant here has let go of what they once knew. They abandoned certainty, names, pride, memory, everything. The city is a mirror of that. It changes, shifts, grows, because nothing within it is fixed." Elias shivered. "And why am I here?" "To test what you've learned," the figure said. "To see if you can hold truth without clinging to it." He looked around. The streets were empty. But he could feel them watching. The city itself was alive, every stone listening. He noticed a marketplace in the distance. Shops had no signs, no names. Stalls held objects that flickered between forms, a loaf of bread one moment, a book the next. A child ran past him, laughing, but when he blinked, the child vanished. The sound of laughter remained, echoing in every alley. Elias realized the city itself was teaching him, nothing could be pinned down. Nothing was permanent. He moved toward the center of the city, where a great tower rose impossibly high, its tip lost in violet clouds. The hum beneath the stones grew louder with each step. At the base of the tower, he found a door carved with symbols that shifted constantly. He placed his hand on it. The moment he touched the symbols, a vision flared before him. He saw himself in the valley of glass, clinging to his maps, refusing to see the mountain that moved. He saw the temple, the gate, and the desert, and now the city, a reflection of his mind, transformed. You are learning, a voice said, not from the door, but from within him. But can you let go completely? The door creaked open, revealing a spiral staircase winding upward. The hum became a chant, faint but growing, like thousands of voices repeating the same word. Elias climbed with each step, memories flickered and dissolved. His old pride, his certainty, his need to always be right, they slipped away like water through his fingers. He felt hollow, yet lighter than ever before. At the top of the staircase, he entered a room of mirrors. Not mirrors that reflected his image, but mirrors that reflected the city itself, folding it upon itself endlessly. And in the center, floating above a pedestal, was a small crystal. It glowed softly, pulsing with light in rhythm with his heartbeat. He reached for it. The moment his fingers touched the crystal, the city trembled. The streets below twisted violently, towers bending and snapping, fountains exploding in sprays of light. Elias stumbled backward, clutching the crystal, and then he heard the whispers again. Hundreds of them, layered over each other, calling his old name, his old titles, his old beliefs, every certainty he had ever held. He could fight them. He could resist. He could cling to what he had been. Or he could let them go. Elias closed his eyes. The whispers rose, louder, urgent, accusing. He felt the weight of all he had known pressing down on him. And then, he let it slip. His old self, the man who refused to doubt, dissolved in the glow of the crystal. The city stilled, the towers straightened, the streets quieted, and a strange calm filled the air. When he opened his eyes, he was alone at the top of the tower. The city below was still alive, shifting subtly, but no longer frantic. He held the crystal in his hands. Its light was gentle now, warm. He understood, without words, that it was not a prize, it was a mirror. A reflection of the courage to let go, and yet, a chill ran down his spine. From the violet clouds above, a shadow moved. Slow, deliberate, almost human, a figure wrapped in grey. Elias's heart skipped. The girl, she stepped onto the balcony, her eyes blazing with stormlight. "You've come far," she said. "But the hardest lesson is still ahead." He gripped the crystal tighter. "What is it?" Her smile was almost invisible, sharp as a knife. "To see the truth, you must enter the heart of chaos itself, where even the unlearned fear to tread." Before he could speak, the shadow of the clouds shifted, revealing a vast chasm opening in the center of the city. A wind of fire and darkness roared from it, carrying the smell of ink and smoke. Elias stared into the abyss. His pulse raced. The crystal pulsed in his hand, as though urging him forward. The girl's voice echoed, "Will you leap, Elias? Or turn back to the world you once knew?" The wind howled. The chasm waited, and for the first time, Elias didn't know what to do. Chapter 7, The Abyss of Certainty. The chasm yawned before him, black and endless. Heat rose from its depths, carrying the scent of molten stone and ink. The wind howled, tugging at his cloak, at his hair, at every step he took toward the edge. The city below lay still, yet the tower seemed to lean away, as if recoiling from the void. Elias gripped the crystal tightly. Its glow pulsed against his palm, a quiet heartbeat against the roaring wind. The girl in grey stood beside him on the balcony, her cloak flaring like storm clouds. "You must descend," she said, her voice calm over the chaos. "To see what's true, you must confront what you refuse to see." Elias looked down. The abyss seemed bottomless. Darkness twisted with fire, shadows of his own past swirling in the heat. Every moment he had clung to certainty, every map he had drawn, every time he had mocked doubt or dismissed questions. "I can't," he whispered. "I'll be swallowed." The girl's eyes softened. "You will. But only if you try to hold on to the old you. Let go, and it may reveal what you were too blind to notice." Elias took a shaky breath. The wind tore at him, mocking him, testing him. Slowly, he stepped onto a narrow stone bridge that arched over the abyss. The stone was slick with condensation, glowing faintly under the crystal's light. Every step sent ripples of fire and shadow beneath him, threatening to consume him. Halfway across, the shadows rose, they took shape, figures made entirely of light and smoke, faces flickering with every identity he had ever assumed. Some wore his old pride, some his stubborn certainty, some his arrogance. They whispered, shouted, screamed his name in every tone imaginable. "Return. You belong above. Your maps are truth. You are right. Doubt is weakness." Elias stumbled, clutching the crystal. His vision blurred, the wind wailing louder. For a moment, he thought he might fall. But then a faint memory rose from the temple of unlearning, from the city that had forgotten itself. Truth is alive. It does not wait for you to hold it. He steadied himself. I am not who I was, he whispered. I am not these voices. I am here. I am listening. The shadows hesitated. Their forms flickered, twisting, then fractured. They shrieked as if torn by an invisible blade, scattering into sparks that spiraled down into the abyss. Elias felt a strange lightness, as though chains he hadn't noticed were falling from him. The crystal pulsed stronger in his hand, as if approving, guiding him. At the far end of the bridge, the abyss opened into a cavern. The air shimmered, thick with heat and light, carrying the hum of impossible machines and the whisper of unseen wings. This place was alive, not with maps or mirrors, not with names or memory, but with pure possibility. He stepped inside. The floor beneath him glowed faintly, revealing shapes that shifted and reformed as he walked. Paths appeared, disappeared, and reappeared. The walls pulsed with colors he could not name, sounds he could not describe, and there, at the center, was a pedestal of obsidian. On it sat a sphere of pure light, spinning slowly, reflecting not the world outside but the worlds inside him, all he had been, all he had unlearned, all he could become. He approached cautiously. His reflection appeared on its surface, not one, but many, layered like the pages of a book. Each one whispered his old thoughts, old fears, old certainties. Elias closed his eyes and took a deep breath. I don't know, he said aloud. I don't know, and I will try anyway. The sphere shuddered, then shone brighter. The layers of reflection peeled away, dissolving into threads of light that wound around him, pulling him closer. He felt every old identity, every rigid belief, every certainty, dissolve when he opened his eyes. He was alone, or so it seemed. The sphere hovered above his hand now, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat, and then he heard her voice, soft, echoing, impossible to locate. You have faced the abyss of certainty, she said. But the final lesson waits in a place where even the free are afraid to look. The cavern shifted suddenly. The stone beneath him melted into rivers of glass. The walls stretched impossibly high, disappearing into darkness. The sphere floated toward a narrow tunnel at the far end. Elias followed, crystal in hand, heart racing with anticipation and fear. As he entered the tunnel, the light dimmed. His footsteps echoed endlessly, blending with whispers he could not identify, some old, some new, all unknown. At the tunnel's end, a door appeared. It was not solid. It shimmered, like a veil of smoke and water. Symbols formed and vanished upon it, swirling faster and faster, until they merged into a single word, one he could not read, yet somehow understood. He reached out, the veil rippled, and before him, a new world waited, one he had never imagined, yet one he somehow knew he must enter. The wind from the abyss howled behind him, as if warning him not to step forward. Elias inhaled deeply. The crystal pulsed warmly, steady and true. Then he crossed the threshold. Chapter 8, The Garden of Questioning. The world beyond the veil opened slowly, revealing a landscape that seemed to breathe. Trees swayed without wind, their leaves shifting colors in a rhythm that felt like conversation. Rivers ran backward and forward at the same time, their waters singing in voices both familiar and strange. Flowers glimmered like glass, opening and closing without sound, revealing tiny worlds within each petal. Elias stepped forward, his footsteps soft on the grass, which felt warm and alive beneath his feet. The crystal in his hand pulsed gently, as though acknowledging the new realm. For the first time since leaving the Valley of Glass, he did not feel the weight of certainty pressing on his chest. Instead, a strange thrill, the pulse of questions waiting to be asked, filled him. A figure approached, floating slightly above the ground. Cloaked in iridescent silk that shimmered like the rivers, it tilted its head at him. Welcome, it said, voice rippling like the surface of water. This is the Garden of Questioning. Every question you have ever dared to ask, or refused to ask, grows here. Elias looked around, bewildered. Every question? Even the ones I never knew I had. The figure smiled. Especially those. Before him, the garden shifted. A tree bent low, its branches dripping with glowing fruit. Each fruit hummed with a soft vibration. When he touched one, a vision bloomed, a memory he had suppressed, a belief he had clung to, a moment where he had refused to change his mind. He pulled his hand back, trembling. It shows everything, he whispered. Not everything, said the figure. Only the parts you carry in your heart. The rest waits for you to dare to see it. Elias moved deeper into the garden. The air was thick with a scent like rain on stone and ink on parchment. Paths appeared as he walked, but they vanished when he looked away, only to reappear elsewhere. Every choice, left, right, forward, led to new visions, new questions. A stream ran nearby, and its waters reflected not the sky, but possibilities. Elias leaned over. In its surface, he saw himself standing in the desert, facing the gate of changing names, letting go of his identity. He saw himself in the city that forgot itself, surrendering his old beliefs. And now, here, he saw a version of himself willing to ask even the hardest questions, questions that might change everything he thought he knew. A sudden movement caught his eye. From behind a cluster of glassy flowers, a small creature emerged. Its body shimmered like mercury, constantly shifting form, sometimes bird, sometimes cat, sometimes human, always something else entirely. It regarded him with curious eyes. "Why do you hesitate?" it asked. Elias swallowed. I've never asked like this before. Questions don't feel safe anymore. The creature tilted its head. Questions are never safe. That is why they are worth asking. You will find answers only when you risk being wrong. Elias nodded slowly. And if I'm wrong? The creature's form shifted, rippling like water. Then you are learning. Do you wish to learn? He hesitated for a moment, thinking of the abyss, the gate, the city, the temple of unlearning. Every step had demanded that he surrender certainty. But now, in this garden of endless possibility, he realized something profound. To know the world, he must first know himself, or at least be willing to not know himself. Yes, he said. I want to learn. The creature chirped, a sound like laughter and wind combined. It darted forward, weaving between the flowers, and then vanished into a glimmering arch of light. Elias followed. The arch led him to a small clearing. In the center, a pool shimmered, reflecting not the sky, but countless shifting questions. He knelt beside it. When he touched the water, a vision rose, a council of figures, each representing beliefs he had held stubbornly. They argued endlessly, shouting, clashing, refusing to see one another. Elias watched, heart pounding. He understood now. His own mind had once been that council, trapped in endless certainty, deaf to challenge, blind to possibility. He whispered into the water, "What do I do?" The reflection in the pool rippled. The council dissolved, leaving only a single figure, himself, younger, hesitant, ready to listen. From somewhere above, the wind carried a faint, familiar voice. "You are learning to listen," it said. The girl's voice, soft but firm. But the garden is only the beginning. Curiosity alone cannot save you. You must venture further, where the world resists even the bravest questions. Elias looked up. Beyond the trees, beyond the streams of shimmering light, he saw a mountain rising impossibly high, its peak lost in swirling clouds of storm. Lightning danced along its sides, wild and untamed. The voice continued. That mountain holds the next truth, the one most fear cannot touch. Only those willing to embrace doubt fully may climb it. Elias stood, clutching the crystal. The garden hummed softly beneath his feet, encouraging him forward. He took a deep breath. Every step he had taken, through the valley, the temple, the city, the abyss, had led him here. The mountain waited, and as the storm above rumbled, and the winds whispered warnings he could barely hear, Elias took his first step toward the climb. The crystal pulsed warmly, as if urging him onward. He didn't know what he would find at the summit. He only knew that the climb would demand everything he had learned, everything he had unlearned, and perhaps even more. The path was narrow. The winds howled louder. The sky above churned with light and shadow, and behind him, the garden of questioning shimmered, alive with possibilities he would carry forward and leave behind as he ascended into the storm. Chapter 9, The Summit of Shifting Shadows. The mountain rose before Elias like a living sentinel, its jagged cliffs twisting impossibly into the sky. Lightning arced across its face, painting the clouds in violent streaks of white and violet. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and stone, every gust of wind cutting across his skin like knives. Elias adjusted the crystal in his hand. Its warm pulse seemed to resonate with the mountain, as though the two were speaking to each other. Every step toward the climb made the wind howl louder, bending the trees and shifting the very air. The mountain wasn't just a place, it was alive. It responded to his thoughts, his fears, his doubts. He started the ascent along a narrow path of stone, jagged and slick with rain. Each step felt uncertain. The ground shifted beneath him, sometimes expanding, sometimes narrowing. He realized that the mountain was reflecting his mind. Every hesitation caused the trail to falter, every doubt made the rocks tremble. A shadow moved across the path ahead. Elias froze. It was a figure, indistinct at first, but slowly taking shape, a tall, cloaked version of himself, features sharp with pride and certainty. The shadow mirrored his every movement, yet its eyes glimmered with accusation. "You climb with uncertainty," it said, voice echoing against the cliffs. "You cannot claim knowledge if you question everything." Elias swallowed. I've learned that knowledge is not a possession. It is a journey. The shadow laughed, low and bitter. A journey without certainty is nothing but chaos. You'll fall. You'll fail. And you will regret leaving what you knew behind. Lightning split the sky. The path trembled. Rocks shifted under his feet. The wind screamed. Elias gritted his teeth. Then I will climb anyway. He stepped forward. Each movement of his body caused the mountain to ripple. Paths appeared and disappeared, cliffs rose to block him, then melted into the stone. The shadow followed him, sometimes ahead, sometimes beside him, whispering doubts in voices he knew all too well, the voices of teachers, rivals, and his own old self. Hours, or perhaps minutes, passed. Time stretched and contracted like elastic. Elias began to feel exhaustion gnawing at him, his legs trembling, his chest burning. But the crystal pulsed in his hand, steady, warm, alive. At a sudden turn, the path narrowed to a jagged ridge with nothing on either side but endless void. Elias felt the shadow rise before him, taller now, stretching impossibly high. You cannot pass, it said. You are not whole. You are not certain. You are nothing. Elias paused, chest heaving, eyes locked on the shadow. I am not nothing, he whispered. I am learning to see. The shadow's form flickered violently, then erupted into shards of darkness that scattered like falling stars into the wind. Elias blinked, and a new path appeared, narrow, but solid, leading higher. He followed it, climbing, hands gripping jagged stone. The storm above intensified, yet the crystal's light guided him, illuminating ledges and footholds that had seemed invisible moments before. Halfway up, he reached a plateau. There, a pool of black water shimmered, reflecting not the storm, but images of all the versions of himself he had met on this journey, in the library, the temple, the city, the garden. Elias knelt beside it. The reflections whispered again, voices overlapping in a chorus. Who are you? What do you truly seek? Will you remain the same? He stared into the water. His old certainty, his pride, his stubbornness, even his fears, all lay there, waiting. For the first time, he understood that the mountain was not just testing his courage, but his willingness to confront himself fully. I don't know, he admitted, voice trembling. I don't know who I am yet, or what awaits at the top. But I will keep climbing. The pool shimmered. The reflections parted, leaving a single figure, not himself, not his shadow, but someone entirely new, composed of light and possibility. The figure reached a hand toward him. Elias grasped it instinctively. A surge of energy coursed through him. The storm's roar dimmed, the wind softened, and the path ahead of him became clear. He stood, shoulders straight, heart steady. The summit was close now, the clouds swirling above revealing glimpses of a golden light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the crystal, and then a rumble shook the mountain. From the clouds, a voice boomed, deep, echoing, impossible to place. You have climbed far, Elias. But the final truth awaits where even light fears to tread. Lightning flashed, illuminating a narrow bridge suspended above nothingness. It led to a doorway carved into the clouds, faintly glowing with stormlight. The wind tugged at him, pulling at the crystal, whispering doubt, fear, and old habits. Elias clenched the crystal, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. The storm howled louder than ever. The bridge swayed. The clouds beneath churned like ink, and just as he reached the doorway, the crystal pulsed one last time, brighter, warmer, and almost alive. He crossed the threshold, and everything changed. Chapter 10, The Chamber of Impossible Answers. Elias stepped through the doorway and was immediately struck by silence. The storm behind him vanished as if it had never existed, leaving only a void that stretched endlessly. The clouds swirled into pale light, and the ground beneath him was glass, black, smooth, reflecting a sky that shimmered with shifting colors like molten metal. Before him rose a building, impossible in its architecture. Its walls bent inward and outward at the same time, pillars floated without support, and windows opened onto vistas that did not exist, forests growing upside down, oceans above him, cities floating in midair. He felt the crystal pulse warmly in his hand, guiding him forward. The doorway of the building opened before him, revealing a chamber vast enough to hold 1,000 worlds. At the center floated a sphere of light, larger than the crystal, spinning slowly. Its surface rippled with impossible visions, entire lands forming and dissolving in seconds, people appearing and vanishing, fires igniting without smoke, rivers flowing in every direction at once, and from the sphere came voices. Hundreds, thousands, overlapping in harmony and chaos. Some whispered answers he had sought, others asked questions he had never thought to ask. Elias took a step closer. What is this? He whispered. A voice, calm and deep, answered, not from the sphere, but from the chamber itself. This is the chamber of impossible answers. Here, truth is not fixed. Knowledge is not a possession. Every answer exists, yet none can be held. To leave with understanding, you must be willing to hold nothing. He looked into the sphere. It shimmered, showing him images from his journey: the valley of glass, the temple of unlearning, the desert, the city that forgot itself, the mountain, all melting into one another, as if the world itself had no boundaries. The figure of the girl appeared beside him, cloak flowing with the light. Her eyes gleamed. "Elias," she said, "you've unlearned, questioned, and dared to let go. But the final answers are not for knowing. They are for seeing, feeling, and accepting." The chamber shifted. Pathways appeared, each leading to a floating platform suspended over nothingness. On each platform, a reflection of Elias stood waiting, one his old self, one the unlearned mapmaker, one the curious wanderer, one the climber of the stormed mountain. The reflections began to speak. All at once: you must choose. No, you must let go. Cling, or fall. Doubt is your guide. Elias's mind spun. The crystal pulsed in his hand, warm and steady, grounding him. He realized that there was no choice in the way he expected. No single answer would suffice. To proceed, he had to step beyond choice, beyond certainty, beyond even himself. He stepped onto the first platform. It trembled, light flaring beneath him. The reflection of his old self reached for him, eyes burning with accusation. "You cannot abandon certainty," it said. Elias shook his head. "I am not abandoning. I am learning to see." The platform shifted. Suddenly, he was on another, then another. Each one tested him. Illusions of fear, pride, despair, and confusion pressed against him like waves. Yet the crystal's warmth never faltered. Each time he let go of a thought, a fear, or a claim of certainty, the platform steadied, and the chamber glimmered brighter. Finally, he reached the last platform. The sphere loomed closer, its light almost gentle now, pulsing with every beat of his heart. He gazed into it, and the impossible vision softened. He saw the valley, the temple, the desert, the city, the mountain, but also possibilities he had never imagined, lives he could live, choices he could make, truths that could change with perspective. And he understood, the answers were not for holding. They were for seeing clearly enough to act, to move forward without clinging. The girl's voice whispered again, "Do you see it now? The world does not exist for your comfort. It does not wait for your certainty. It moves, shifts, changes. To navigate it, you must embrace what cannot be contained." Elias nodded. He felt a weight lift from his chest. The crystal pulsed once more, then lifted from his hand, hovering in front of the sphere. Light flared, bathing the chamber. The floating platforms dissolved into nothing, the chamber itself shimmering and twisting. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in the void. He stood on a plain bathed in soft golden light. The girl stood before him, smiling faintly. "You have seen the impossible," she said. "But seeing is only the beginning. Now, you must carry it into the world that waits beyond this plane, a world that tests whether you can live with what you have learned." Elias took a deep breath. The crystal floated by his side, warm, steady, alive. The air shimmered, as if readying him for the next step. When in the distance, a city appeared, not impossible, not shifting, but real, solid, with people, streets, and the weight of choices waiting for him. The girl's voice followed him. "The final journey begins now, Elias. And nothing will be certain." The plain stretched before him, golden light fading into the horizon. Every step he took carried the weight of all he had unlearned, and all he had yet to learn. And somewhere in the distance, the world waited, unpredictable, alive, and entirely his to explore. Chapter 11. The Labyrinth of Living Choices. The plain stretched endlessly before Elias, golden and warm, but beneath the surface lay a pulse he could feel with every step, subtle vibrations that hinted the world itself was alive. At the horizon, a vast labyrinth rose, walls carved from smooth obsidian, edges glinting with a faint inner light. The gates opened as he approached, welcoming him into a place that seemed to breathe. He stepped inside. The air was thick with possibility, each corridor shifting slightly with his presence. Hallways stretched and bent in impossible angles, turning back on themselves, dividing into paths that seemed to appear only when he looked away. Every step echoed like a heartbeat in a living chest. From the shadows, whispers emerged, not voices of fear this time, but fragments of choice. Do you save the child or pursue the truth? Do you speak or remain silent? Do you cling to what you know, or risk the unknown? Elias realized the labyrinth was alive, aware, responding to his thoughts. Each decision he made caused walls to shift, doors to appear or vanish, and corridors to twist in unexpected ways. A figure appeared before him, cloaked in shimmering silver. Its face was hidden, but Elias felt familiarity in its presence. "Every choice matters," it said. "This labyrinth tests not what you know, but how you act when certainty is gone." Elias nodded, gripping the crystal at his side. The glow pulsed, steady and warm, as if lending him courage. He moved forward. At the first fork, he saw two paths, one lined with light, warm and inviting, the other shrouded in shadow, filled with faint whispers of warning. He hesitated. The warm path promised comfort, perhaps even safety. The shadowed one whispered of risk, challenge, and the unknown. He remembered the temple, the gate, the garden, and the chamber of impossible answers. He had learned that comfort could never lead to truth. He stepped into the shadow. The path wound sharply, walls narrowing and then opening into vast chambers filled with impossible scenarios. In one, a man pleaded for help. In another, a truth begged to be spoken but would bring harm if revealed. Every choice tugged at him, forcing him to weigh consequence, compassion, and curiosity simultaneously. Each decision reshaped the labyrinth. A door that had seemed solid dissolved into mist, revealing a bridge across a chasm. A corridor that had twisted shut now opened to a glowing staircase spiraling upward. Elias realized the labyrinth mirrored life itself, infinite, unpredictable, and alive with consequence. No map could guide him, no certainty could shelter him. Only attention, courage, and wisdom would lead him forward. Hours, or perhaps minutes, passed in this dance of choices. He moved through rooms filled with joy, sorrow, temptation, and fear. He saved those he could, risked himself when needed, and sometimes chose to observe rather than act. The crystal pulsed steadily beside him, as if affirming each step taken with awareness. Finally, he reached a vast hall at the labyrinth center. The walls were mirrors, reflecting not him, but the sum of all choices he had made, every path, every act, every decision. The hall hummed with energy, alive and aware, as if applauding and questioning him at once. And there, at the center, stood the girl. Her grey cloak shimmered with 1,000 faint lights. "You have navigated the labyrinth of living choices," she said. "You have acted without certainty, embraced doubt, and moved forward anyway." Elias felt a surge of exhaustion and relief. "What now?" he asked. "Is the journey over?" She shook her head. "No. The journey never ends. But you are ready to return to the world you left behind. Only now, you will act differently. Only now, you will see what others cannot." Elias looked around. The labyrinth walls shimmered, bending and dissolving, leaving the golden plain beyond. He stepped forward, feeling the crystal pulse warmly against his side, guiding him toward the horizon. And in that moment, he understood, the world was alive, full of questions, consequences, and choices, and he was no longer afraid to navigate it. But just as the labyrinth faded behind him, a shadow fell across the plain. In the distance, beyond the golden light, a mountain rose, taller, darker, and more foreboding than any he had seen before. Storm clouds swirled at its peak, lightning flashing inside the darkness. The girl's voice whispered, carried on the wind, "The final truth awaits there. Not for seeing, not for knowing, but for becoming. Are you ready, Elias?" Elias clenched the crystal. His pulse quickened. Every lesson, every unlearning, every choice he had made, it all led here. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world ahead, and with steady steps, he moved toward the mountain, knowing that the ultimate test of all he had learned was about to begin. Chapter 12, the peak of becoming. The mountain loomed before Elias, vast and unyielding, its peak lost in clouds darker than night yet alive with flashes of lightning. The wind roared around him, tugging at his cloak and hair, carrying the scent of stone and storm. Below, the golden plain stretched endlessly, the labyrinth, the garden, and the chamber of impossible answers fading behind him like echoes of dreams. Elias tightened his grip on the crystal. Its warm pulse mirrored his own heartbeat, steady, alive, grounding him against the fury of the mountain. Every step forward felt like a promise, every gust of wind like a test. He began the climb. The stone was slick with rain and mist. The wind bent around him, forming shapes, faces of people he had known, shadows of the selves he had shed, whispers of doubts and fears he had thought forgotten. They called to him, pleading, mocking, warning a return. They shouted, "You cannot endure." Elias's steps faltered, but he remembered everything he had learned. The temple of unlearning had taught him to let go of pride. The gate had stripped him of names and identity. The city had shown him the power of curiosity, and the garden had reminded him to embrace questions. The abyss, the summit, the chamber, the labyrinth, all had prepared him for this. He inhaled deeply. "I do not fear you," he whispered. "I do not hold certainty, and yet I will climb." The mountain trembled beneath him. A sudden storm burst from the clouds, winds like fists, lightning striking jaggedly across the stone. But as he climbed, the crystal pulsed ever stronger, illuminating the path. Every step he took carved it into existence, forming a bridge of light through the chaos. At the halfway point, the wind coalesced into a figure, the girl. Her cloak flared like lightning. "This is the final test, Elias," she said. "Beyond this storm lies the peak of becoming. But you cannot climb it with hesitation, with doubt, or clinging to what you were. You must climb as you are now, unknowing, open, and alive." Elias nodded, swallowing the fear twisting in his stomach. He climbed on. The storm tried to push him back, twisting the stone into impossible angles, trying to shove him into the void. Every gust threatened to throw him off the mountain, every flash of lightning revealed shadows of his old selves, accusing him of folly, fear, and arrogance. He faltered. For the first time, he almost gave in. But then he felt the crystal's warmth, pulsing in perfect rhythm with his heart. He remembered the labyrinth, how every choice shaped the path, and the garden, where questions had become guidance rather than fear. He let go. Not of the mountain, not of the climb, but of every expectation he carried. Every old identity, every certainty, every claim to knowing dissolved in the storm. And suddenly, the wind softened, the stone steadied, the lightning parted like a curtain revealing the peak above. Elias climbed the final stretch. The clouds swirled around him, alive with shifting colors, but the crystal illuminated a narrow path that rose directly into the heart of the storm. At last, he reached the summit, the peak of becoming opened before him. The clouds parted completely, revealing a sky of endless possibilities, stars shifting and spinning, distant lands glowing faintly, rivers of light flowing through the void. And there, at the center, floated a pedestal of pure light. Elias approached. The crystal pulsed, resonating with the pedestal. He placed it upon the surface. A surge of warmth, brilliance, and clarity coursed through him. The pedestal expanded into a sphere of radiant energy, surrounding him, lifting him, dissolving the boundary between himself and the world. In that moment, he understood the journey was never about maps, names, certainty, or even answers. It was about becoming, seeing the world as it truly was, alive and shifting, and moving within it with courage, curiosity, and openness. He felt the weight of every choice he had made, every step he had taken, every lesson he had learned. They were not burdens, but threads woven into the fabric of who he had become. He was both himself and the world, a living nexus of questions, answers, uncertainty, and possibility. The girl appeared beside him, radiant in stormlight. She smiled. "You have become," she said softly. "Not who you were, not who you thought you could be, but who the world needed you to be. The mountain was never the final challenge, it was a mirror. And you have passed it." Elias looked out across the endless horizon. Below, valleys, deserts, cities, gardens, and labyrinths stretched endlessly. He could feel them all alive, breathing, waiting. Every place he had visited pulsed with life, shifting with infinite possibilities, and he understood that his journey was not an end, but a beginning. He smiled, feeling a lightness he had never known. The storm faded, leaving only clarity, warmth, and the gentle pulse of the crystal. Then, "I am ready," he whispered. "Ready to live, to learn, to question, to become." The girl nodded, fading into the light of the summit. "Go, Elias. The world is waiting." He turned toward the horizon. Each step he took carried the lessons of the temple, the gate, the city, the garden, the abyss, the labyrinth, and the peak. Every step was uncertain, yet alive. Every step was his, and as he descended into the world below, the wind whispered around him, to unlearn is to become. To question is to live. And to live is to see beyond what you once believed. Elias smiled, feeling the pulse of possibility under his feet, and stepped forward into the endless horizon. The journey was complete. And yet, it had only just begun. Thanks for listening to today's journey. Which audiobook or mindset story should we explore next on Momentum Mind? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. I want to know what challenges you're thinking. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you never miss a chance to level up your mind. Remember, your momentum starts with your mindset, so keep moving forward.